And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my East Coast counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
Blake, you sound more excited. I forgot to unmute there. Blake, you sound more excited about me being on the East Coast than I am about being on the East Coast. You seem all jazzed up now that we're like in a moderately similar time zone, now that we're not having to completely cross paths.
Well, I think it just like the West Coast timeline and the East Coast timeline is like a completely different vibe scenario. And let's just call it what it is. Our sport is a Eastern sport.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you were in the East Coast. You're only an hour ahead of me, which makes me feel a lot better. But, you know, I got to admit, I missed yesterday. I missed doing Sunday shows.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody, that we couldn't do the Sunday show. But here's the thing. The move that I am currently in the middle of is almost done. So we're going to be back to our normal scheduling. We're not going to miss any more shows. We're also past the last real summer holiday besides Labor Day, which we will not take any time off for Labor Day. So we're back in the swing of things. We're back to 3 shows a week. We're back to the craziness, the yelling, the arguing, the full coverage of the greatest sport and greatest level of the sport on this planet. All of that is going back to normal very shortly. And it all starts with what we opened the show with, back on East Coast time.
Well, I just figured out something too, because this month the NCAA game comes back. Yeah, Joe sounds low, Blake. I don't know. Is there a way? Yeah, you're kind of low.
I don't know I can't really adjust it on this mic. Who said that?
Okay. Kevin.
Okay.
I agree with him, but I'm like, you're all the way up on my end.
I juiced it a little bit.
There we go.
All right. What were you saying? Go ahead.
NCAA video game comes out this weekend or this month, excuse me. I just realized if you pre-order it, it comes out on my birthday.
When's your birthday? 19th?
July the 16th.
Ah.
So you get 3 days. Okay. As soon as the bills go through and everything's kosher, I'm going to be pre-ordering the deluxe version of NCAA football. I told my wife today, I was like, listen, it's going to come out of the account. Don't freak out. And by the way, there's nobody on this planet that could stop me. The only person that could stop me would be myself on playing this video game. And what will be a brisk 15 days. That's light work.
What about Ben wanting a turn on the game? Is that going to possibly get in the way?
So Santa Claus might be bringing him a PlayStation 5, but don't say anything.
What does he have now?
I mean, we bought a PlayStation 5, but he's just like,
he wants his own. Oh, you're saying you're going to get him his own.
Yeah.
It's a gift, but it's so that you don't have to share it with him, so that you can play.
That's $500 investment that I will ever have.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's not the only investment that was done today. It is official. The Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners are now in the SEC. Joe, all that time that we spent and talked about them joining the conference, it's finally here. And I got to say something. I think A&M fans are right. I think Texas is going to start really annoying me more than anybody.
Yeah, that was a very, very loud noise today that was coming from Oklahoma, especially Texas. Oh, my God. They had the amount of coverage that they had going on Texas's campus with the SEC network and everything. It was a pretty big spectacle. You could tell that they're excited that they're not playing in the Big 12 anymore. But holy shit, they've been in the conference for a day, and they're already talking as much smack as they've been talking. I feel like Oklahoma fans weren't as loud. Am I just maybe?
They had a band outside of a bar. They had 20 band members. They're like, okay.
So not as excited.
No, not at all. And I will tell you this, I find it very hilarious, Joe, in a lot of different ways, especially in reference to Paul Feinbaum running out there saying this is the best thing that's ever happened to the SEC. No, you want me to tell you what the best thing that's ever happened to the SEC? Winning. That's what's geographical location. That's what's the best thing that's happened to the SEC. And I think that they're pushing this because they know that they're in a massive market. But, I got to admit something. The fan bases are watching, and fan bases understand that, yes, this is a big deal for your conference. But I think that there's maybe some jealousy, and not only jealousy, like, hey, man, we've been here a long time. Like, I mean, you're pandering to them. That's cool. But when September the 1st rolls around and that ball's kicked off, we're going to start seeing who really can play and who can't.
Well, I think what's the most obnoxious part of this is you can't come out swinging and making all this noise when you haven't competed at this level yet. And that's the thing that I haven't understood that has happened since the announcement itself that they were making the move. And we've reached the culmination point. This is going to be probably the loudest month of those conversations. And it's moderately
SEC media days around the corner.
It's moderately warranted for Texas's side because this is arguably a better team than last year. There are roster holes in certain spots, especially their defensive line, replacing Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. But, man, if they stumble and they lose a stupid game this year that they're not supposed to, oh, my God, they need to understand it is going to be insufferable right back at them. They are going to get humbled so quickly. So they better be ready to compete and not mess up. If they lose to Georgia, I don't think it'll be as much backlash. But if there's a dumb loss on their schedule that they're not supposed to have, they are going to be treated so badly over the rest of the course of the season.
Well, I want to stick to what you just said. I think a lot of things are true, but this is the one that's the biggest for me. I saw Texas today or yesterday going out there saying, we want Georgia. We want Georgia. And look, I think Texas is going to be fine. Joe, you asked a question earlier in reference to which team will have the most success possibly in the SEC. Well, I got a news flash for the both of them, okay? Like, Texas is a really good football team. They're a really good program. They're doing a lot of great things in all the three major sports. Yeah. So is Oklahoma. I'm not discrediting that. But you have not, to this moment, in which everybody has the question of, they have not gone in through a week-in, week-out schedule like they have like this ever. By the way, it's not just one sport. Joe, they haven't done it in SEC baseball. I mean, this is a whole different type of deal here. So, like, I look at Texas fans. I get it. You're excited to be in the league. There's a buzz about the league. A lot of great teams in this league. But you can't have scenarios like you did with Houston last year. I understand Quinn Ewers was hurt. But, I mean, that's back-to-back years he's been hurt. Are you 1,000% sure going into the season that he'll play all potential 15 games or 16 games now that we have an expanded playoff? So I just look at them and say, okay, people have called me the SEC homer for a long time. Well, we're here, buddy. We're about to strap it up and find out if you're the real deal or not.
To answer that question, though, of which team is going to end up being the most successful, because now it's real. It just got real. There is no
talking season's over with now, big dog.
There's no more speculating. We're about to find out in 2 months' time when this ball's kicked off for the first game of the year. But to answer that possible question of if Texas or Oklahoma is going to be the more successful in the conference, I really think that Texas will be the most successful of the two. I understand that historically Oklahoma has been arguably the most consistent team in college football in the past 100 years. They rarely have had down seasons. The real only one that I can think of recently in the last 30 is that 6-7 season they had in Brent Venables' first year. But I think Texas right now, the momentum that they have going into it, and especially the fact that they have a head coach in Steve Sarkisian that probably doesn't want to go to the NFL with the way that things landed with him in Atlanta. And it's unlikely if he's going to turn down a job like Alabama and an opportunity like that for him to stick at Texas. So for me, Blake, I really do think that Texas is the one in the better position. I'm not saying Oklahoma won't be a good team, but just Texas right now and everything that they have going for them in the modern NIL era, this feels like a period of history that is going to be set for them to flourish eventually. I'm not saying that.
Well, what's interesting is I will continue to say this. Not enough people are talking about Oklahoma, though. I mean, just in general. I know that they have issues. I know that they have, offensive line they don't know a lot about. We'll actually talk about a team tonight that I think had to go to a position group in the portal just to save face. Yeah. But, I mean, Oklahoma's just sitting here like, okay. And, Joe, I got to be real with you. A lot of times the quiet guy at the bar is the one you don't need to fight. And so I do think that we have a little bit of recency bias with Texas. Joe, I'm still of the understanding here and remember the past. Look, Sark, this is Sark's first 10-win season. He's got question marks of his own. I mean, can he replicate it? Can they replicate it in the SEC? Joe, What if they don't replicate it in the SEC? So there are a lot of questions that they have to answer week in and week out. Oklahoma, I feel like, has been a little bit more down to earth and to reality of their.
Okay, it's weird.
They didn't come out and party and parade like they did. Yeah. Okay, like Texas did.
But we have a comment section on a particular video that would dictate that they also think that they should go to the playoff this year when. And this is where the confusion comes with me for Oklahoma, where I think that there is long-term future for success for them to be steadily consistent, but it's not this year. And if this is a down year, it's not the end of the world.
I agree with that. I think that they are like that. I just think Texas is just so much bigger on that level. Yeah. It's fair. I don't think Oklahoma, we talked about this enough. I don't think that they understand that this is a line of scrimmage league. Mm. Joe, I've been labeled a homer. I'm just look, man.
I'm not disagreeing.
Bro, you legitimately had me going out there during the beginning of last season talking about on my other show, please, dear God, people mess with A&M and that defensive line. And people legitimately, Joe, looked at me like I was an imbecile. Well, I'm not no imbecile. Look at how good that D-line was. Good luck. Oh, by the way, they're about the same. So I'm just, all right.
Did you see Sankey was asked about
the horns down?
If horns down's going to be a penalty or not, and his response was, "I'm not answering questions about."
So that means yes.
Man, I wish they would just let that not be a penalty. Why is it such a sensitive issue? Like, why? It is one of the most funniest banters in the entire sport because it's.
I don't get it either.
It is the only hand motion to support a team that can be inverted the way that it is. So for a team to be able to do that as a celebration is so goddamn funny. I don't know why that there's this stigma against it and why it's deemed so disrespectful. I think some fan bases need to, hop off their high horse and know how to laugh at themselves a little.
Well, I don't get it either. I remember being in it on with Jake Crane a long time ago, and we were talking about that. The Big 12 throwing penalties for horns down. I'm like, look, and I'll say the same thing. If the SEC does this and they throw a penalty, you're soft. Okay, don't be soft. Like, I mean,
we're
look,
throwing
man.
Mustard bottles at Lane Kiffin. And
okay, there we go. You literally, I see. This is why I know that we're good co-hosts together. I mean, Joe, we literally had Tennessee people throwing golf balls and mustard at Lane Kiffin. And then, if you remember when he caught one-handed that bottle of piss? I mean, no, it was a clear bottle. It was golden. I'm pretty sure that's a bottle of piss. So the bottom line is, okay, we got to have a little fun. College baseball did this. They're kind of regulated it some. Let the kid pimp a home run if it's in a playoff and it's in a big-time situation. Like, come on, dude. Come on. All right. Not all we got to talk about. Joe, there's going to be a succession at Utah. I think we're going to have to tippy-toe down that one as you mentioned off air. But we'll talk about the succession of Utah. Also, West Virginia deep dive and a Iowa State deep dive. Do not, no one tag Josh Pate in our Iowa State deep dive. Don't do it.
I don't want to get yelled at. How positive are you going to be about Iowa State? I feel like I'm kind of down the middle on them.
I think I seriously believe this. Of all the deep dives we've done, they're the most confusing.
Yeah, that's probably a really good way of putting it. That's a really
Joe,
good way.
you got look at the receiving yards that a team like Iowa State has returning.
That's the point.
And you start looking at Rocco Becht, and then I'm like, well, where's their deficiency? Oh shit, they were in the hundreds in rushing yards. They can't run the football, and so they're just Joe. 4 of their 5 top tacklers returns. I mean, what's up at Iowa State?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where 19. I'll wait till we get to it. I'll wait. I don't want to dive too deep in it. West Virginia is going to be fun, though. I think West Virginia is going to be my least. It's going to have so little evidence to like really support my take on them, but I feel pretty good about what I have to say. That's all. I'm my non-spoiler filled sneak peek there.
Dude, I don't know.
Trust me. I got a take. I got a take on it.
Okay. Well, maybe you can sway me a different way on them. Okay. All right, let's get rolling. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share. Share all those groups if you're on Facebook. Share all of the social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell. Coming up on 7,000 subscribers. We need everybody to go over to Ruffino and Joe Show if you haven't done so already and subscribe. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe there as well. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Joe, we got a lot to talk about. We do that next. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag. BetOnline.ag. All right. So, Joe, I got to admit something. Joe Burrow today was asked a question. He was asked, well, which place is better, Louisiana or Ohio? And Joe Burrow, the only thing I've ever disagreed on him on, he said the nightlife is better in Ohio than it is in Louisiana. He said, however, I could be wrong because I never went out at LSU. I'm just going to say this. When your boy went up there and talked about everything else being the best, Louisiana over Ohio, I see our good friend Tom is in here. Just throwing it out there, baby. The boot is where it's happening. By the way, I'm hearing some rumblings that about our boy BK getting some NIL really rolling. So I wonder if BK can recruit. We'll find that out here in the next couple of weeks. Joe, we go, and I'm glad that we're back here because a lot of news has happened over the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
But Utah and Coach Whittingham, who has been one of the best stables in college football for quite some time, it was announced today that there was a succession place in for Utah. Your thoughts on the recent news going on in Utah?
Yeah, so for the necessary context here, Scally at one point was named the coach in waiting in 2019, very recently. And that anointment, I guess is probably the way to put it, was rescinded after an internal investigation. This was pointed out by Pete Thamel, who originally tweeted the update on this. Internal investigation regarding some conduct, some racial comments that he had made. It does seem that there's been a period of forgiveness, and he's also made up for any inappropriate actions that he's done, which is good to see that Utah is willing to give him time to learn and make good on, whatever inappropriate things that he's done to prove that it does not define who he is as a coach. Don't know enough outside of that because the investigation and the reports of the investigation, albeit were thorough, there was not much context on exactly what he did and said. On the football field, though, I mean, he's a brilliant defensive coordinator. I mean, one of the first things that I thought was when we did our defensive coordinator rankings, he would have been somebody that if we had a top 10, he certainly would have been in those top 10s. Mm-hmm. The way that he has been able to get amazing production out of a group of guys that is relatively mostly 3 stars, maybe the occasional 4-star, but very rarely guys from the state of Utah and the surrounding area. The production that he's able to get out of guys like Cole Bishop and turn them into highly draftable players.
Going into Texas and just getting a low 3-star and developing, man. I mean, they've done it for a long time.
I understand why originally he was offered this and why he was reoffered, because he seemingly bleeds what Utah is as a program, which is being hard-nosed, physical, punch you in the mouth. And I think that he could be a great coach, assuming that there's no more issues outside of the lines of the field. He could end up being a really, really good coach to replace Whittingham, which is pretty scary to know that they're going to go from one hard-nosed dude to another.
I don't want to be that guy to Utah fans. They probably think I hate him enough, but I don't. But I want to throw this out there to you, though, Joe.
Yeah.
Why? Because
why are they doing this?
Well, I'm just saying, like, it was kind of rhetorical, but why? You know, like, there could be a whole coaching search that you could go through, and there might be somebody that you might be able to hire that might have experience, but you're not giving yourself any options. It's somewhat lazy, well, in a way. And I get that, and this is what's going to happen in the comment section. You ready? Yeah. Here come Utah fans. It's going to be all throughout our YouTube section. Oh, well, Blake, he's a staple here, and we love him. And it's a good that we have the guy that's going to be next. You know, Whittingham's getting at the end of his career. It's stability for recruiting. Joe, there could easily be somebody that they can go and get that can make Utah still relevant. Somebody that has experience. I mean, you know what happened the last time they did this and they hired a young coach in Whittingham?
That's fair. Wait, but wasn't Whittingham already on this?
He was on the staff, but Whittingham had a whole bunch of different stops and places that he had been. Am I not mistaken on that?
I'm checking right now. I can't type as quickly because I don't have my normal setup.
I got it for you.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying. He was originally, he did have a number of stops, but he was the D-line coach at Utah, then the D coordinator for a season or for a number of seasons from 95 to 2004, and then he took over for Urban Meyer, if I'm remembering that correctly. Well, I mean, I think that that's a really good example of knowing a guy who's the heartbeat and going with him. I understand what you're saying, but Scalley's also been brought up for defensive coordinator openings, and I spotted an article that he was in consideration for the USC DC job very early on in that process. So does it hurt for them to want to keep the guy in the boat? Is that
I was completely off on this with Whittingham. I had thought that he had been – I honestly thought that at some point him and Urban were together before they were at Utah. They were not. Yeah. He's been there since 1994. Look, you've had success. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't know. Scratch everything I just said. Regardless, I still don't like it. Like, I still don't like, you're not give yourself options. Just because it worked before doesn't mean it's going to continue to work, right? Like, I mean, Kyle Whittingham could be somebody. I mean, it could be a one-off. I mean, I get what you're trying to do. I get what you're saying. It's stability. A guy knows what he needs to do. I get a protege. I get all of it. I just don't like it.
I disagree with that notion because I think that if they understand what works for them, it doesn't hurt to keep them. But where I do agree with you, if you're going to do this, what's the runway for Whittingham to retire? Like, let's be a little more clear. And I'm sure that they've told him that it's a 2-year plan. But at the same time,
did they tell him it was a 2-year plan in 19?
That's what's confusing to me because that's 5 years ago now. We're approaching 5 years at the start of the season, and he still hasn't left. And I don't know, maybe Whittingham stuck around because of the uncertainty of the situation that led him to lose this title. Yeah, it is a little weird. It is a little weird that this open-ended, hey, he's got
a weird situation going on. Who would have ever thought that Utah would have something weird going on?
All right.
I mean, I'm just to the place where, look, man, it looks like that he had issues. They had to investigate. People, let's just call it what it is, claim him to be a little, I don't even know if I want to say it, but it gets investigated, Joe. Either it gets swept under the rug or Bottom line is they don't find anything, but it looks like that they don't even find anything from him. I just
significant enough that they thought it was fireable. It sounds like it was problematic things that they thought were redeemable. That was the takeaway from.
I mean, he didn't use foul language. He just said, he just pointed out people's skin color. And I mean, I get it, but I think
it's
that
stuff it's stuff that coaches.
It's definitely not the worst thing that I've ever heard on a football field.
Right.
Not even remotely close.
Right.
And I just not even touching the stratosphere, if I'm being a little honest, so I just get to a place where, okay, but I think you limit yourself and what you could go and get. I mean, why do you need to do that? Joe, what if they go in the Big 12 and they suck defensively? Then what?
I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think that's the only thing you're saying that I definitely disagree with. They're going to be the pinnacle of defense.
Fair.
In that conference, because nobody knows how to play defense, nor do they know how to develop or recruit to play defense. And I think that what sets them up for success defensively, Blake, is that they have notoriously found guys that maybe don't fit the height, weight, speed thresholds of elite prospects, and they've gotten production out of them. Like Jonah Ellis is a really good example where not a super explosive bendy edge rusher, and he was one of the most productive sack getters in college football last season.
Pause.
But to the rest of your point, yeah, there is a lot of uncertainty, and they must really like him. That's all I'm going to say. They must really like him if they think that he's worthy of getting this eventual promotion.
Do you hear the thunder?
No.
Okay, it is absolutely storming outside. Hopefully I don't get cut off and we can continue here.
I'll just finish the show on my own. I won't have anyone.
That's completely fine with me. Any other thoughts on Scally?
Nah, it's kind of a nothing burger. It's kind of like, yeah, I get it, but I slightly agree with your point that maybe they could have at least done some sort of a coaching search.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It makes no sense, right? Makes no sense at all. All right. Let's move on to it. Joe, we continue on our deep dives, and we've been doing a lot of these. And look, we got this the last month before we start talking about fall camps and things that are going on. We start previewing SEC Media Days in a couple of weeks. I mean, that's going to be a big deal in Dallas. But we stay in Big 12 country, and we go to the Mountaineer State. We talk about the West Virginia Mountaineers. Joe, very intrigued by Neal Brown. They were 9-4 last year. I think a lot of people had Neal Brown on their hot seat. He turns it around. He's not let go, and there's a lot of hope in West Virginia. What do you make of the Mountaineers?
So I was a pretty big Mountaineer hater. I was not a believer. I was in the crop of individuals that last year thought that they were going to finish last in the Big 12, that they were losing too much last season. And Neal Brown and Garrett Green made me look like a dumbass. They proved me wrong. And I look at what they've got going on, and I kind of alluded to this on another deep dive that we did. I want to say it might have been the Kansas State one, where I look at their schedule, and they got one of the most brutal schedules possible out of any of the other Big 12 teams. All these other teams got cakewalks. They have to play Kansas. They have to play Oklahoma State. They have to play Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona, Texas Tech. They have a tough draw. There's really not a lot of gimmies on top of the fact that they do have to play Penn State as well. It is going to be a really hard path for them. But all I can come to the conclusion is, Blake, is that I doubted them last year, and I'm not going to do it again. They have found ways to win, and I give Neal Brown credit. They find ways to win when they're not supposed to. I think that they've got a really good veteran offensive line, despite having to replace Zach Frazier up the middle, who I was a big fan of last draft. Wyatt Milam, who's their left tackle, is liked in NFL circles. I'm not a crazy huge fan, but big, talented left tackle, along with the rest of their offensive line. They've got some strong defensive players that I think could be productive. And I think that their run game is extremely impressive with a number of options, especially Jaheim White, that they can turn to. So, man, I'm not going to doubt them, Blake. I think that they're going to finish at the top of this conference. I think that they are just such a consistent wild card in that Neal Brown finds ways to motivate these guys, even when they might have deficiencies at random position groups.
I don't think wide receiver is random.
Yeah, wide receiver is going to be, but they didn't have anyone super sexy at that position last year. And I know Garrett Green was like a 53%
Well, they ran the ball. I mean,
completion
Garrett
guy.
Green, had 772 yards, 13 touchdowns. You talked about Jaheim White. C.J. Donaldson returns, the little bulldozer. He had 798. Joe, they had or three guys over 700 yards rushing. I mean, they ran the ball all over the place. But they do not have the – now, could they have the
last year?
weapons?
This is where I'm confused, though, is that like last year they didn't have it. And I kind of wonder, can they just overcome it again?
Well, they bring in Justin Robinson, from Mississippi State, Jaden Braid from Oklahoma State. I don't know. I have no idea. By the way, Cole Taylor, who transferred from LSU, is over there, and I'm kind of perplexed. I didn't even realize the kid, was doing anything there. I didn't watch a lot of West Virginia.
Conference on Phil Steele.
Well, my point is, Cole Taylor? That's your best receiving option? And so it brings me to the point of this. I think they're going to run the ball on anybody. I think they can.
Yeah.
They keep proving that they can do it, especially in this conference. Now, Penn State or, Oklahoma State, they ran all over. I mean, so many teams, Joe, that they did a lot of effective things too last year, but they have a massive issue. They were 85th last year in passing yards allowed. They went into the transfer portal and got 6 DBs or 6 corners. Okay, scream to me that your secondary stinks. Okay, they weren't bad against the run. Look, they were 46 in the country against the run, and so I thought that they did some really good things. Their entire defensive line returns, but Joe, they have the ultimate issue for any team that has an offensive pulse. Joe, they were almost last in the Big 12 last year in sacks with their 4 defensive linemen. 7 sacks out of 4 guys is not getting it done. You just got to be more productive at rushing the passer. And, Joe, it's just that their secondary has been so bad. I know what you're saying. Look, last year on paper, they weren't a sexy team. But, Joe, you're telling me that you don't think that you're good in the secondary when you go and get 6 DBs and corners, no less. The bottom line is I think that they're going to have to do exactly like you mentioned last year, control the ball, control the clock. And, by the way, man, I don't know if they get into a shootout with one of these teams. Like, if you get in a real shootout, can Garrett Green legitimately throw you into a win? And look, he was 53% passer last year, 2,406 yards, but he can run it. And I get that he's a multi-dynamic dude. But, Joe, as a guy that covered a multi-dynamic dude last year, what did LSU and Jaden have issues with? Are you still here, or did my power go out?
No, I'm still here.
All right, when LSU lost last year, it wasn't the legs that propelled them to win. Remember against Missouri, remember against Bama, he's having to throw the ball because they got to play catch-up. I just don't know if there's a lot of just things I like. There's a lot of things I really don't like.
But this is where I keep coming back to. Last year, their success was inexplicable. It was unexplainable. There was no way for us to really pinpoint what led to their success. And I think it comes down to partially Garrett Green did emerge as a playmaker, not a consistent one. They realized that they could take more aggressive deep shots, and he's not somebody who's going to be consistent connecting over the middle of the field. One of the things that I've heard talked about him from those that have covered this West Virginia team, last year they had so many issues coming into the season. And last year we sat here and we looked at them and we did our Big 12 preview and we both circled them and just said, there's nothing to worry about. And they return a lot of important production. They didn't really lose that much. They didn't lose a lot.
But that production wasn't a lot, though. I mean, let's just be real.
Wait. I understand that. But there is a point to a younger core of guys after the previous season putting guys out and an older class leaving. They're coming in. We're expecting them to stink. They outperformed expectations without any crazy production. They run the ball really freaking well. They now come back with a lot of those guys in another year as starters with 113 career starts on their offensive line. I think that the way I'm projecting this and seeing this is I don't want to overthink it. I think that we give them the benefit of the doubt that they just improve and develop, which happens with football teams, and that because most of these guys have played together for so long, that they continue to improve and grow together. That's all I
But
can
Joe,
really put together.
I get what you're saying, but I mean, we can't just say all of them are going to be better. Joe,
Obviously.
you generated 7 sacks from your 4 guys that rush the passer consistently. It's not good enough. I mean, it's just not. And I get what you're saying, but like, what are we trying to project here? I mean, when you're 9-4, you want to build off of that, do you not? I mean, I don't think that they can beat Penn State. And I'm going to be real with you. Do I think they can beat Kansas? Yeah, I do, because tough matchup. I don't think they can beat Oklahoma State. What happens against Iowa State, a team that we're talking about next? Kansas State. Joe, you're really high on Arizona. We talked about Arizona.
I'm not high on Arizona. We did that segment. I'm not high on them.
Joe, you said that they're going to have 9 wins. At some point, they got to have that 9th win.
I said 8-4.
Well, let me give you an Arizona take in reference to the schedule.
I think West Virginia beats Arizona.
Hold on one second. Let's say Fafita and McMillan go absolutely stupid because your secondary was so bad last year. Are you going to be able to run the ball and keep up? Like, you can't talk about how bad a team's secondary was a year ago and him being one of the top quarterbacks in college football and think that he might not have the ability to light him up.
Had significantly more roster turnover than this West Virginia team did.
Fair.
West Virginia didn't get eaten up at all by the portal, which can't be said the same about a lot of teams in college football. That's what I'm coming back with.
Joe, do you really think that McMillan and Fafita won't connect on them?
They will. Last year, not only did my whole point is last year there was no expectation for them to succeed. And not only did they win and have a positive record, they had one of the best records in the conference. They finished 9-4 last year, unless I'm misremembering. 9-4 last year.
Yeah, 9-4
with
last
no
year.
reason for them to be successful. And Neal Brown kept all these guys on this team. I normally come on here with like really well thought out analysis on position groups and pointing out why certain things will work and won't. This is the only time, as I said in the open, where I feel like I don't really have much of a take here. I'm just going off of the fact that they didn't lose that much. Neal Brown somehow is a better coach than we think he is, and it seems like he's keeping this team together. So
that's all fine and dandy. Could you win 8 or 9 games? Okay, could I see it? Yeah. But you're supposed to take that next step. I mean, it's not – I mean, you got Penn State on your schedule. Joe, I don't think they can beat our new favorite team that's on their schedule. They can't beat Texas Tech. And we're Texas Tech homers now.
Next year. I think they go 9-3. I think they beat Texas Tech. I'm sorry, Red Raider fans. I see it as them –
well, then they're going to have to upset Oklahoma State or Kansas State, Kansas.
As I said in the Oklahoma State deep dive, I'm not scared of Oklahoma State. I'm just not.
All right. So it's going to backfire on you.
I think that Garrett – no, it backfired on me last year when I didn't pick them. So I'm not going to let it backfire. It's going to backfire on you. They are
You forget about Gundy in October, baby.
I think you're forgetting about the Mountaineers and Neal Brown. I think that's what's happening here. You're overlooking them. We did it last year.
I will say this. The most important game on their schedule is, and I know that every one of them is going to disagree. Joe, it's Penn State. It's week 1. Let me tell you why. Because if Drew Aller and that team and that offense is going to have to find a way to get things moving through the air. You want to test out see if your DB room has emerged and gotten better. Let's go up against a team that's really going to want to prove a point and start throwing it around a little bit too. All I'm saying is, Joe, I could see a scenario where Penn State's on upset alert week 1. I get what you're saying, but in that game, I don't know if Drew Aller can light them up through the air. It plays to what they want to do.
I think it's going to be a barometer for the success of both of these teams, where we're going to find out really quickly how good both of them are. And I think if West Virginia either upsets them or plays them close, tells us, hey, they're going to be a top 3 team in the Big 12. And then the inverse of that is if Penn State loses or if Penn State blows them out of the water, like I think everyone just assumes that they will, that is the indicator of, hey, West Virginia might stumble a little bit and Penn State is going to be a contender in the Big 10. But I wouldn't be surprised if West Virginia doesn't have a lot of success throwing the ball in this game, because Penn State's replacing a ton of guys in their secondary. They put out 3 guys to the NFL this past year with Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, and Daquan Hardy, all three of those guys are gone. So there's a lot of replacing that needs to be done on that defense and that offensive line that could lead to West Virginia maybe pulling this thing out. I don't know, dude. They are one of the few times, West Virginia, that I will willingly come to a preview and throw any logic out the window. It's the only time that I'm going to do it. It's not a bad take.
I don't think it's a bad take. I don't think it's a bad take. I just think that I have a lot more issues with them than I do. You're taking the optimistic approach, and I'm taking the pessimistic approach, and we're probably going to –
I wouldn't call it optimism. I wouldn't call it optimism. I would just call
if they go 9-3, that's optimism for them.
Optimism would be –
if they went 9, West Virginia fans would take 9-3 again next year.
Yeah, and I think that 9-3 is how I see it going. 9-3, I think
I can't see them getting to 9 wins. I can't see it.
But yeah, we don't need to keep repeating points. All I'm just going to finish my thought here with is if they were worse coming into last season than they are right now, then why would we expect them to take a step backward?
Because it's a good point. I mean, I get it.
Second-year starter at quarterback, a lot of offensive linemen coming back.
So Oklahoma State's got all those same things. I don't think that you're benefiting.
They got a grown-ass man playing quarterback who's never been good, okay?
And you know what? And you know what?
And you know what? Younger and developing
and you know what?
As tools.
Oklahoma State went on the road to West Virginia last year, and they threw the ball around. That's how bad they were. Yes, sir. Go look it up.
I'm looking that up because I could have sworn
Ollie Gordon was running all over the place.
I remember the Ollie Gordon performance because I rewatched that game, but I don't remember. Did Alan Bowman play well in that game?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
No, he didn't. 24 for 36 for 210 and 2 touchdowns and a pick.
Oh, I watched that game today. Go watch the pick, by the way. You want to laugh your ass off? Go watch the pick.
It's probably a really dumbass throw by a 35-year-old.
No,
man.
it hits the wide receiver's hands, bounces off the helmet, and it gets picked. Hey, that's good for him. That's good. That's a solid game for him.
Yeah, he has one of the grossest stat lines ever. 15 touchdowns and 14 interceptions.
Sounds like a young Joe DeLeone when he plays me in NCAA football. All right, you want to get to this Iowa State?
Yeah, the Naked Pants team.
The Naked Pants team?
You don't remember that last year where Iowa State had the skin toned pants and they were trying to wear throwbacks and they were like skin tone, like white skin toned, and like a lot of people were saying it looked like they were running out with no pants on. You don't remember this?
No.
I'm gonna look while you do listen. I'm gonna look it up and I'm gonna send it.
Okay, hold on. So Joe, we continue. We do another deep dive here today. We go to the state of Iowa, but not the Hawkeyes. We're gonna stay with the Cyclones here. Joe, I'm gonna preface this by saying no one better tell our good friend Josh Pate of what we're going to say about the Iowa State Cyclones.
What's his obsession again?
I think he just loves twisters.
Oh, okay.
And it's got the Hulkamania colors. It's like
together. I'm an idiot.
Hulkamania twisters. I think that's right up Pate's alley.
Well, I'm sorry, Pate. I don't mean to be negative about your favorite team. I don't think it's actually his favorite team, but.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, you remember this terrible pick. That is easily the worst throwback that I've ever seen, except for those Nebraska had some pretty bad ones. Look, Iowa State is a team, Rocco Beck, the young quarterback, who little slow to start, and I think it was reminiscent of the team being slow to start, but he was a young kid learning the game. He finishes the season with only 3 interceptions in his final 8 games. I think that is important to understand for the trajectory of this team. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll are going to be 2 really important receivers for his success. Their offensive line I like, and I really love the addition of probably one of the most underrated O-line ads in Jalen Travis, who comes over from Princeton. He is a guy who had a lot of love and recognition from NFL circles the previous summer, and he jumps up to the P5 level and could get drafted relatively highly if he has a good season. Ton of great traits. I just think with this Iowa State team, though, that Matt Campbell just strikes me as a guy who just can't get over like that 8-win hump. They had one of their most successful seasons when Brock Purdy, who's a starting NFL quarterback, albeit I am a critic of Brock Purdy, he's still very important for the history of this program.
Didn't Brock Purdy almost get to 2 Super Bowls?
No, he's only gotten them to 1. I'm still a critic of him. My point is that is an elite quarterback that they had. Breece Hall is a dynamic, athletic superstar at running back potentially or was it in his time when he was at Iowa State. He was unbelievably important for their success when he was there. And I just feel like outside of that one season when they had that 10-win year and they were really freaking good, like what else have they brought to the table? What has Matt Campbell done to push over that hump? I just feel like he's a good but not great coach. He's the type of coach that can put together a really strong roster, a strong offensive line, some good defensive pieces. They've got a nice linebacking core, which is probably one of the better ones in the Big 12. But at what point can I sit here and say this is the reason why I can feel confident that they're going to get back to finish at the top of the conference? Because again, they just keep feeling like an 8-win team every single year.
Yeah, it does feel like that every year we wait for the Cyclones to take that next step, and we're always I don't want to say disappointed, but
yeah, disappointed is probably the best way to put it. Underwhelmed?
Underwhelmed, I think is a better way. Joe, I don't understand them. Now, I really had to go look and see what their issues were from a year ago. They can't run the football. And
they were horrible. They were horrible at it.
So I don't know what they need to change. When you don't have a guy that goes over 700 yards rushing, you have issues, okay? And by the way, it's not as if that you played in a tough conference that stopped the run outside of a pair of teams last year. I mean, you could get stuff over on teams. I like Ryko Becht. I think he was average, maybe even a little bit above average last year. Yeah. 63% completion percentage, 23 touchdowns, 8 picks. He's got to get those turnovers down, get TDs up. But, Joe, they can't run the football. And that is the number one issue that they have. Joe, I mean, they had a lot of turnovers last year. I mean, turnovers weren't an issue. I mean, by their 2 top tacklers, Joe, they had 8 interceptions to combine. I mean, you got Jeremiah Cooper who had 5 interceptions last year. He's back. So, I mean, you got a lot of production defensively. They got so much production defensively. By the way, top 50 defense, Joe. I mean, a top 50
they're always
defense.
So good defensively. They're just so
I don't want to say so good, but it's not a team that's just
they run that 3-3-5 really freaking well, and they're hard to get
really well. But Joe, they're 79th in total offense because they cannot run the football. They don't have explosive plays from that unit. But you know what's interesting is you got Jaden Higgins returning, you have Jalen Noel returning, you have Benjamin Brodemeyer returning, the tight end. One guy's got both of them. The receivers have over 800 yards combined between the both of them, meaning at 1,600 yards. They had over 12 touchdowns combined last year. They got receiver play. They were fine a receiver. Their O-line stinks. That's all that it tells me. I mean, you can't convince me that their run game doesn't suck. And if you want to be, Joe, I'll never forget this. About 3 years ago, I remember Saban doing a coaching clinic in New Orleans, and he said, listen, it doesn't matter what the national champion does every year. There's one area I know that if they're going to be in a playoff and continue for a national championship, they can do at will. That's run the football. And that's Nick, right? Like, that is what you remember, even like the 19 team of LSU. If you remember the 2020 team of Alabama, I mean, name the teams. Joe, what do all of them have in common? They could run the ball at will, and nobody could stop it. So if you want to get over that hump, you want to get to that 8-9 wins, you're going to have to find a way to do that, because I think Becht is good enough. I think this defense is good enough. Joe, they got some really good pieces. The problem is I think they're so vanilla, marshmallow soft up front on that offensive line that it might be sad.
And I know I sound like a little bit of a jackass after we did the West Virginia preview, that I threw out a lot of logic to come to my conclusion, but this is where I have to come. I can't be loose on every single prediction. To go back to being strict, because I have proof that that Iowa State has shown up and underwhelmed, as we've said. They have a really strong roster that's average to slightly above average, but I don't see anyone who really makes me think elite. I don't see anyone who makes me think this is one of the best players, top two at his position in the conference. You know, they're not like Utah.
I don't know.
Cam
Jaden
Rising.
Higgins is so explosive, that receiver, man.
I mean, there's other teams in this conference that have some really, really good dynamic receivers, and like Utah's got a bunch of quality players. I mean, we got to bring up Travis Hunter in that conversation. Like there's a lot of potential production that comes from these other teams that can also move the ball through the air. But when you're talking about the last time that they had their best season in the last 5 years was because they had one of the best running backs in the country. They had a really strong tight end room, and they had Brock Purdy, who was one of the better quarterbacks in the country that year that they were
How
really good.
dare you.
So in college football, okay? In college football, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the country at the time, okay? My point is that they had all that going for them and they won 10 games. What do they have going for them right now that is going to make me feel that they're better than an 8-win football team when they've got some close matchups that they have to deal with in 2024 that I just don't feel super great about, because I think that they can outscore them. I think they can outrun them. They can, if they need to outbleed the clock like we're talking about here and just slow things down. I know Iowa's going to do that. I know West Virginia's going to do that the way that they ran the ball last year, returning all the guys that they're doing. I know Texas Tech can with Taj Brooks. I know that Kansas can with Devin Neal. I know Kansas State can with their multitude of running backs and Avery Johnson. You spelled it out perfectly. They don't have that ability if they need to slow the game down and just really grind things out to take over the control of the game. I don't see where we can point to any confidence at running the football.
No, they can't, and that's going to continue to be their issue if they don't pinpoint that. Now, I said this last year. I got a tons of hate by Iowa State fans. I'm going to say it again. I just don't trust a man that bends his bill the way that Matt Campbell does. Remember how all the hate that I got last year for that take?
I think that. I remember you saying it, but I didn't read the comments.
Okay, I legitimately think that guys that bend the cap of their bill like Matt Campbell does are psychopaths. I think that if you did a psychological test on Matt Campbell, it would legitimately be psychopath.
Yeah, it's not. Oh God, it's so bent.
That's what she said.
It's just so. Like, why does he squeeze his hat so much? It's so
I don't
much.
know.
Every one of them.
It's god awful. Matt Campbell is the worst at the God. Matt Campbell is the God's honest worst hat hair and the hat wearer on the face of the planet.
It's also, I think I brought this up last time. What are your thoughts of Ryan Day dyeing his beard? Are you in or out on that?
It doesn't bother me.
That bothers you less than the weird hat?
Yeah. Oh, the weird hat. I swear to God. Dyeing a beard is light years or better than what Matt Campbell does.
Yeah, that's a weird. I don't get it.
I mean, so
man.
what? Ryan Day dyes his beard. Nick Saban dyes his hair. Doesn't make him any less better or worse of a coach.
Yeah, I think that we could have thrown out this whole segment and just let off with the hat bending thing, because you're right. I mean, it's disturbing.
It's more than disturbing. And here comes another question, Joe. How many times are you going to have this many pretty good quarterbacks before you start winning more?
This is where I come down to. I think that Matt Campbell is the epitome of 7-8 wins. He might outperform that occasionally, but my projection for them is 8-4. I do think that they improved. They're bringing back 19 starters. For them to improve after the 7-6 season that they had last year, I think is a step forward. But some have painted them to be this Big 12 sleeper, and can't get behind that. I don't know where the evidence is to point to that makes me feel really super confident knowing that there's all of this other competition in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I think they're going to be about the same. I'd say about 7-5, 8-4,
oh,
maybe.
You're lower on them than I am.
Oh yeah, I'm lower on them than you are.
Oh no, I thought I was the one criticizing him.
Joe, Kansas State, Utah, I don't know. I mean, all their games are on the road. And besides Kansas State there at the end, by the way, you got Iowa in week 2. So I don't think that they're going to win that one. So I look at them, Joe, and say, you know what? Could they? Yeah. Would it surprise me if they got to 9 wins, if I'm being honest? Like they upset or they beat teams? Not really, because it means that they have effectively found a way to run the football. But they're one of the most bizarre teams that we talked about in the Open. Easily one of the most bizarre teams. Could they be 7-5? Yes. Could they get to 9 wins? Yes.
See, I don't feel this is one of the few times I don't feel confident that they exceed that 8-win threshold. I think.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what?
I'm sticking them right at 8. I'm pinning them right at 8.
Okay, completely fine with that. I don't like them. But you know what's wild? I like their quarterback and I like their receiver play.
Yeah, I like Beck. I'm not going to poo-poo him. I think that's a shining spot for them to sneak out some of these wins. But you brought up the key point that we didn't really get to in this discussion, which is their schedule's brutal. There are some Big 12 teams that got some really cakewalk situations, and there's teams like Iowa State that were handed a really brutal stretch. Like they have to go through basically the top half. Yeah, pretty much the top half of the conference. The whole they don't have a single. They don't have very many opportunities to play like back end teams in the conference. I'm re-pulling up their whole schedule, but they've. I just had it pulled up. I swear to God. Like North Dakota, they're going to beat, but Houston's not like a total walkover game. Baylor's probably at the bottom end. UCF's got a really good running back room that's going to be tough for them to deal with. Cincinnati, they'll probably beat. They really got a brutal stretch. Who's the?
Linda Young says, Blake, why is Joe not wearing his hat?
It's packed. I'll put it on. I'll dig it out for Wednesday. It's packed. Sorry, Linda. It's packed. I'm in the middle of a move. I was moving a lot of shit. I'm not wearing that. I can only take one hat with me. The LSU hat had to get buried. Okay. I will dig it out and I will wear it next show.
You don't have to wear it. I think you've served your punishment.
No, there are multiple people commenting. I was tagged on Twitter. I will wear the hat. I am sorry.
I'm just going to say this. I'll continue to tell you this. I think you've served your punishment.
Nope. The listeners of the show say otherwise. So
I guess so. All right. We'll see y'all again Wednesday, correct?
Yes. Time to be determined, but maybe Wednesday morning.
We'll be doing it. All right. We'll see y'all Wednesday. Y'all have a good one. Peace.